Welcome back to Cinema Wellman. I'm your host, David. And today, we're going to look at the top 10 and the bottom 5 films that we screened here at Cinema Wellman for the month of September. There were a total of 72 films, which brings us up to 658 for the year. That's going to be a lifetime total of 7,775. And for those of you keeping track, and I know I am, the race to 10,000 now sits at 2,225, which should happen like that. All right, so September was kind of weird because of the amount of bad movies that I watched. The ones that get designated with the Boris Badenov bomb, the ones that are bad, the ones that are terrible, trash, rubbish, don't watch, avoid at all costs. And there were only 5 for the whole month. So in some ways, that's a really good cinematic month of viewing if there were only 5 that were really trash. But you know as well as I do that I enjoy the bad ones. And I was kind of disappointed that I didn't have more to choose from. But here we go. We're going to start off. Number 5 is titled Cell. It is based on a Stephen King novel. And it was the 39th Stephen King adapted film that I've seen, and that's about where my positivity runs out for this nonsense. So here's what we have. So we have an unexplained, and I don't have a problem with that, but it's an unexplained signal that turns everyone who's on their cell phone at the time into like a murderous zombie. So you're on the phone at the time, the signal comes through, and you are, and you're all of a sudden you're murdering everyone that you can see, and all that kind of stuff happens. So basically it's a zombie movie, and it's not a good one at that. We get a lot of zombie tropes in this one, vampire tropes, the whole thing that we approach someone and their back is turned to us and we think they're good, we think they're normal, we think they're going to be a friend, and when they turn around, we, much to our surprise, not, they are infected, they are turned, whatever. And just stop with that. The other thing this film Cell features that I've really grown sick and tired of is this awful cliche with disaster movies, end of the world scenario movies, that shows loved ones being reunited with other loved ones hundreds of miles away without communication during a global end of days catastrophe. Can we just stop that? Stop it. Samuel L. Jackson is in this, and he's in a lot of stuff. That's really not saying anything, is it? That's not a plus or a minus. John Cusack is in this, and I have nothing against John Cusack, but I am about to do for you my John Cusack imitation from Cell. And I don't do a lot of imitations for you. Here we go. Are you ready? This is what John Cusack looked like for 90% of Cell. I'm going to take off the headphones here. So this is what John Cusack looked like during this movie. And it got to be so silly that it was distracting. And I was wondering towards the end of it if he wasn't doing this to kind of hide the fact that he was in this movie. This is terrible. This is just terrible. Let's move on. I'm going to switch these off. Let's move on to number 4 of the bottom 5, and that's Moonfall. Hold on. All right, Moonfall. Roland Emmerich directed it. So if a bell rang in your head when you heard Roland Emmerich, probably it's because he directed Independence Day, and its really horrible sequel, Independence Day Resurgence. He also directed White House Down, and he directed The Day After Tomorrow. You want an unbelievable family reunion during end of days. The Day After Tomorrow is that. Dennis Quaid and Jake Gyllenhaal, insane. In any event, Roland Emmerich's known for, destroying the world. And so when you go into one of those films, like going into a Michael Bay movie, it's at your own risk. And you deserve everything that's coming to you. And I knew that this wasn't going to be good, and I asked for it. I watched it. This one's on me. All right, so these films, if it's not a comet, it's an asteroid. If it's not an asteroid, it's a meteor. And if it's not a meteor, then something's up with the moon. Those are basically our choices. So here's what IMDb has to say about this one. And I quote, "A mysterious force knocks the moon from its orbit and sends it hurtling on a collision course towards Earth." So in this one, something's up with the moon. Now, listen, I like science fiction a lot. I really do. Some of my favorite films belong in that genre of science fiction. And I realize that the genre is called science fiction and not science fact, but can we have, I don't know, maybe 20% of real science taking a part in this? Can some physics work? Can some science work in this? Can we have it sprinkled in here and there? Make at least some scientific aspects possible or realistic or believable? Just a bit? Is that too much to ask for? This got so out of hand with that. Again, you suspend reality when you watch movies, period. Even if they're realistic in nature. Science fiction, suspend reality. Action movies, disaster movies, all movies suspend reality. But it gets to be a problem when you don't have that much reality in your toolbox to suspend. And this was one of those. This was terrible. Visually, some of it's really cool, but I couldn't get past the scientific absurdity of it. And Patrick Wilson is in it, and I hate Patrick Wilson. You know why I hate Patrick Wilson? I'll give you 2 words. Hard candy. And I know it was a movie, and I know he was playing a part, and I guess, because I hate him so much, he did a good job with that part. But Patrick Wilson, can't watch you. Sorry. Let's move on. Number three on the bottom 5 is Burn. And Burn is from 1969, and it stars an American film star that is highly touted and I really don't like, and that's Marlon Brando. Okay. The Godfather. Tremendous, great film, really good performance. Really good performance. Let's go back. On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire, yes, and yes. Other than that, I dare you. I mean, I really do. I think Marlon Brando is the most overrated American actor ever. Really. I mean, it's Last Tango in Paris, terrible. The stuff that he did, the thing about Brando, if you read anything about Brando, he never took the time to learn any of his lines. So there are these hysterical stories of, even from The Godfather, that his lines were like taped on Robert Duvall's back so he could read them. You know what? If you're going to be that much of a genius, learn your lines. And this mess is about colonization. And I have no idea what was going on with colonization at the time in the 60s and 70s that people were like, wow, let's make all these movies about colonization. It's terrible. It's awful. It's listen, it borders on genocide in a lot of cases and things like that. And England guilty. And that's just the way it is. This is terrible. I can't think of any reason why anyone would want to watch this movie. That's pretty clear, I think. Number 2 on the bottom 5, before we get to the good ones, is The Last Tycoon. And The Last Tycoon is a film from 1976. The source material is a novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Wrote my favorite American novel of all time, The Great Gatsby. It's directed by Elia Kazan, who's a wonderful director. It's got a cast that includes people like Robert Mitchum, Jack Nicholson's in this, Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis for everything Tony Curtis is. Same thing with Ray Milland. But we got Robert De Niro, Donald Pleasance. It's a really good cast. So you got good source material, you got a good director, you got a good cast, and this movie was trash. There's something that, you talk about colonization and the need to make movies about colonization. There's another thing that Hollywood likes to make movies about, and it's movie making. And you'd think they'd know how to do that, and yet they do not. There are at least 20 wonderful, amazing, phenomenal films about movie making. This, The Last Tycoon, is not one of them. The only reason I watched it was nominated for an Oscar for its art direction and set decoration. I love that stuff. I'm a huge fan of that. If you don't pay attention to that, it's something that is so important, and it's like an umpire in a baseball game. If you notice it, somebody's not doing their job. It should be seamless. You should accept everything that you see as being part of that world. And after working on the Woundwood and seeing how the set decoration folks worked at their craft, we got to have this in there. That doesn't belong there. Let's move this out of there. And it's really cool. It's really cool. So that's the only reason I saw it, and that part of it was good. But this was just junk. Avoid The Last Tycoon. Next, number 1 on the bottom 5 for September was Maximum Overdrive. This stars Emilio Estevez, Pat Hingle. I love Pat Hingle as much as the next guy, but again, another Stephen King story adapted into a film, and he actually directed this one. And when I was reading up about this, I read that in an interview, Stephen King was asked, why don't you direct any more movies? Why haven't you directed any movies since then? And his response was, just watch Maximum Overdrive. It's really that bad. And the rumors are that there was more cocaine on the staff, on the crew, on the set, than there was anything else. And again, I mentioned that with the last movie, drugs and filmmaking do not mix, kids. Don't do that. I'm not going to say too much more about this because coming up at the end of the month is going to be the Halloween episode, which is going to take the top 10, bottom 5 Stephen King adapted works into films. And I have a feeling that Maximum Overdrive is going to be on the bottom 5 of that too. So I'm not going to say anything else about it at this time. Let's not pile on. There'll be time for that. So that brings us to the top. Let's look at that. We want to, the bad ones are fun, but here we go. Here are the top 10 films. Now, out of the 72, 34 of them got the thumbs up. And I neglected to mention in the Cinema Wellman origin story that the thumbs up is really an homage to the original, the OGs, Siskel and Ebert, who did really the first film review show that I ever saw, and that's simply what they did. It was a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and that's why I do the thumbs up. So there were 34 films out of the 72 that got a thumbs up, so I had to narrow it down to the top 10 for you, as I always do. So let's start with a Christmas movie. And wait, a Christmas movie? Is it a Christmas movie like Elf, or is it a Christmas movie like Die Hard? It's a Christmas movie, and this is from 2017, and it's titled El Camino Christmas. This is somewhere in between that, which is definitely a Christmas movie, and it takes place at Christmas, but this is an interesting little quirky little film that I ran across when I was looking for stuff to add to my queue. That's, I get an off minute. I'm like, let's see what Netflix has going on. I'm like looking through, and I see the poster. And if the poster intrigues me, I'll look it up on IMDb. And then I look it up on IMDb. They had a rather confusing synopsis. It was kind of bizarre, but I gave it a shot anyway. The main reason I wanted to watch this is probably because of Michelle Milette, who is one of the leads in El Camino Christmas, and I love her she's Kate in Letterkenny, so she's fantastic. Who else is in it? And again, this was sometimes you're drawn in because of the director. Sometimes you're drawn in because of the synopsis. Sometimes you're drawn in by the poster, and other times it's just the cast. And this cast, Tim Allen is in it, Vincent D'Onofrio, Jessica Alba, Emilio Rivera, Kurtwood RoboCop Smith. Kurtwood Smith from the dad Red from that 70s show, and also Dax Shepard. And I'm not a big fan of Dax Shepard, but he's fine in this. It's a little comedy that has pretty interesting characters, and the twist is something that's not, you're gonna see the twist coming from a mile away, but it's a comedy. It's not a action, psychological thriller, suspense thing that, so it doesn't mean that much that you see the twist coming. It'll give you a few laughs, and it's only 89 minutes, which is one of those things like the 90-minute mark is important. That's an hour and a half of your time. They could sneak it in under that, even 1 minute under. What am I going to do for an hour and a half? All right, here we go. Number 9 on the list is from 2010, and it is titled A Film Unfinished, and it's a documentary. And if you've watched any of the Cinema Wellman monthly screenings, you know that the top 10 is usually sprinkled with documentaries, and September is no exception. So I also screened during September Leni Riefenstahl's infamous propaganda film, The Triumph of the Will, which is about the Nuremberg, the Nazi rallies, where like 1 million people would show up to watch Hitler speak, and this is, and that's I think the most famous / infamous propaganda film ever, and this is another film about Nazi propaganda. And with A Film Unfinished, it deals with the Warsaw Ghetto. And the Warsaw Ghetto set up in Poland during World War II to house all the Jews in one place. And the Nazis staged and filmed sequences in the Warsaw Ghetto of the Jews living comfortably, being treated well, living their lives kind of normally, eating well, and everyone knows that obviously was not the truth. the Warsaw Ghetto was in operation for 2.5 years, and upwards of 80,000 Jews died there, and many from starvation. So, again, this propaganda machine, this it's titled A Film Unfinished because history, we saw what the Nazis let us see with their propaganda films depicting life in the Warsaw Ghetto. This documentary takes reels of film that weren't used that show what life in the Warsaw Ghetto was really like. If you're a World War II history person, I think you'll find this very interesting and fascinating. Propaganda is an amazingly powerful weapon, and it was very interesting to see the propaganda right next to the reality at the time. So that's really good. That was a film unfinished, and that comes in at number 9. Number 8 is from 2004, and that is also World War II Nazi related. Now, I have to say that I knew about Downfall because of something on YouTube. And I had never seen the movie. I'd never heard of the movie. And I forget who told me about it, but there was this little clip on YouTube that featured this sequence from this movie, this German movie about World War II and Hitler, that is subtitled, of course. And what they did was they changed the subtitles. So you see all the video, you see all the visuals, you hear all the authentic German that's being spoken, and yet the comedy bit is the subtitles. And it's really funny to watch this movie having seen that and then seeing the seriousness of that scene within this extremely serious film. And Downfall is about the end of the Third Reich. Things are unraveling. I mean, there's suicides all over the place. People that know that you're taking the coward's way out. They know that they were going to be captured, tried, and executed as war criminals, so they killed themselves. So people are eating cyanide left and right, and you eat the cyanide and then you shoot yourself in the head in case the cyanide doesn't work. So that's the kind of film this is, and yet someone took this really pivotal scene from this film and made it funny. And what they did when I first saw it, it's this scene where Hitler finds out that really the war, it's really done. It's done. So he is going to just lose it on a grand scale. And he asks certain people to leave the room, and he keeps certain people in the room, and then he goes ballistic. And again, I hate to mention this, but I have to, because that's how I first saw any of this movie. When I saw the YouTube comedy bit, it's Hitler losing his mind because he's a Cowboys fan, and the Cowboys had just lost to the Giants. And again, everything is kept the same except for the subtitles. And Hitler is shaking, and he takes off his glasses, and he's got head and hands, and he starts to, and again, remember, you can hear the German, but you're reading this preposterous parody where Hitler is a Cowboys fan, and not Peyton Manning, but Eli Manning has defeated his Cowboys. And he is ranting about how can you expect Tony Romo to take Jessica Simpson to Cabo for a week, and how can you expect him to be in any shape to come back and play a football game? I had to mention that. All that aside, Downfall is amazing. Amazing. And it's really something that, in my opinion, truthfully shows who those people were. And it's, again, it's World War II, it's Holocaust, and it's hard to watch because as you watch, all those stories. But it's amazing. It's amazing. And other than that, and I felt I needed to mention that because when I saw this extremely serious film that I had seen turned into something funny, and they did it for Cowboys Giants. I know they did it for Hitler was upset that the band Oasis broke up. There were all sorts. It got to be very creative on YouTube, and if you want to watch any of those, you just look it up, YouTube. I think you'll find it if you just type in Hitler is a Cowboys fan. Enough about that. Number 7, Les Dunes Soufflées, or The Second Breath, is a French noir film from 1966. And it kind of has a familiar plot to it. It's the old gangster, and it's the old gangster that's being recruited into one last job. It's the gangster who escapes from jail and meets up with his old comrades to execute one last job. And in this case, they take something tried and true, and it absolutely works 100%. Directed by the great Jean-Pierre Melville. This is French film noir, and it is more about, I think it's more about the inspector chasing the criminal than it is about the criminal. And Paul Maurice is exceptional as that police inspector. The cinematography, crisp as always in those French films. I'm not sure if this is, I think it's new wave. I think it's French new wave. The music certainly is. It hits on all cylinders. It's a heist film, and I love heist films. This is they're stealing platinum. Never saw that before. A heist movie and stealing platinum. This is a good one. Les Dunes Soufflées. Number 6 is Fractured, and Fractured is from 2019. And when I watched Fractured, one of the things I thought about was 20 years ago, would I have been seeing this movie? And the point I'm going to try to make, is that nowadays, it seems like a lot of movies are being made. Netflix makes their own movies. Amazon Prime makes their own movies. Hulu makes their own movies. Fill in the blank, they make their own movies. When I was growing up, the studios made the movies, you made independent movies, or you did one of those and it was terrible and it went straight to video. Nowadays, it's really hard to keep your head above movie water. Sometimes it seems to me that a large percentage of films made today wouldn't have been made 20 years ago because there would be no way to expose people to them. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is Fractured is not like a theater movie. It's not a movie. It's more like a elongated Twilight Zone episode. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's showing up. It's number 6 on my top 10 for September. It's pretty cool. I'll give you I'll give you the IMDb synopsis. And I quote, "A couple stops at a gas station where their 6-year-old daughter's arm is fractured. They hurry to a hospital. Something strange is going on there. And the wife and daughter go missing." Now, hospitals are creepy, even if nothing strange is going on. This is really interesting. I have to tell you that I figured it out before I figured out the twist before the end, but it really didn't hurt. It, I was like, oh, is it this? And then when it was that, I was like, wow, okay, that's not bad at all. Just because you see it coming, as long as it's not, a self-addressed envelope, it's in most cases it's fine. This is interesting. Again, it's fractured. It's on Netflix. Oh, and I mentioned the platform. Remember, if you're interested in the where to find any of these 15 films, especially the top 10, not the bottom five, go to the blog. It's you can find it at cinemawellman.com, and I list the platforms at the end of the piece every month. Okay, so that's number 6. That's fractured. Number 5 is from 2021. Welcome back to Cinema Wellman, old friend Noomi Rapace. Noomi shows up again, and if you look at the movie poster, it reads "I on the dagger till doden skiller os ad," and I don't speak Danish, and that was probably poorly pronounced. But what the movie poster translates to is "In evil days till death do us part." Now, in English, this film is titled The Trip, and it's an absolute blast. Once again, I'm going to revert to IMDb because they do it so well. Here's a quote. A dysfunctional couple head to a remote cabin to reconnect, but each has intentions to kill the other. Before they can carry out their plans, unexpected visitors arrive and they face greater danger. This is a comedy. Obviously a black comedy, but it's a comedy. Noomi, fantastic. I'll watch anything you're in. She stars alongside Axel Henny, who I've seen in other things, and this couple, and they're the couple, and they're in need of much more than a marriage counselor. It's ultra violent. It's very funny, and the unexpected visitors that greet them are ones that you do not want knocking on your door. That's for sure. This thing is worth a look. It's a lot of fun, and it's called The Trip. Number 4 of the best of September is a documentary from 2020 titled Banksy and the Rise of Outlaw Art. I love the graffiti artist Banksy. I love everything about Banksy. I've seen a bunch of films about Banksy. I've looked up hundreds of Banksy's works online. All for it, all in, 100%. It's fantastic. If you know nothing about Banksy, you need to, and if you like art, you need to look into what that's all about. And this film kind of looks into, because we don't know who Banksy really is, and it tries to explore the mystery, and it tries to find out a little bit. There's a little bit of that, and it's just like, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't really care. Is it one person? I don't care. Is it a team of people? I don't care. I just don't care because I am so behind everything. This subversive art, this guerrilla art, this beautiful graffiti that's a political statement. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And one of the things that they do deal with is that recently, past couple of years, a Banksy piece, Girl with Balloon, was auctioned off at the famous auction house Sotheby's. And as soon as the gavel came down and that painting was sold for $1.4 million, someone in the gallery who was working with Banksy hit a button, and the painting shredded itself. There was a shredder that was built into the frame, and it half shred the painting that just sold for $1.4 million. Don't be sad for the person that bought that, because I think now I keep saying film, it's a painting. I'm all about art. Now the piece is worth 20-something million. So don't feel bad for the person that paid 1.4 only to see it shred. They're going to get their money. Another thing that they briefly touch upon is something that is worth a look on the interwebs, and that is Banksy created a pop-up art exhibit in England titled Dismal Land, and it was a takeoff on Disneyland. And if you look that up, you'll see there's great stuff. I'm going to put up some photos from Dismal Land, and the art is great. The statement is great. It's perfect. I wish I got there. So that's number 4. That is Banksy and the Rise of Outlaw Art. And if you're interested in art, take a look. And if you watch this, you'll probably become interested in Banksy. And if you become interested in Banksy, there are a couple of other documentaries that you see. One is Banksy Most Wanted that I also watched in September. And another is Exit Through the Gift Shop, which Banksy made himself or herself or themselves, whatever the case may be. Coming up to number 3. Number 3 from 2017, another Stephen King adaptation. This is one that I have not read. I've not read this novel. And the tagline on the poster reads, "Some games you play, some you survive." And Gerald's Game centers on a married couple who want to add some spice to their marriage and their love life. And that spice for this couple comes in the form of a trip to a remote lake house and some handcuffs. Cast here, very good, very capable. Carla Gugino is the wife. She's excellent. Bruce Greenwood is the husband. You don't like him, but that means he does a good job. Carla is handcuffed to the bed, like a big 4-poster bed, by her husband. And things barely begin when he actually drops dead of a heart attack. And he is actually on top of her when he dies. And she is handcuffed to the bed. And what follows is a survival story in more ways than one. And to me, it was one of those, what would you do types of movies. Like, how could I get out of this? What am I going to do? I've got X, Y, Z. Of course, things like water and food come into play, or you're going to die anyway. Can she break anything? Can she slip out some way? It's really, really compelling. And the mode of storytelling is interesting because it features an alive version of Bruce Greenwood's husband and an untethered version of Carla Gugino's wife in the room with her as she's handcuffed and trying to figure out how to survive this ordeal. This is going through her head. She also has a very disturbing, horrible abuse story in her life that she is reliving parts of that. There's a hungry dog that wanders into the house and is like licking up the husband, because the husband falls on the ground and, cracks open his head when she kicks him off of her on the bed, and a dog comes in and there's the lapping up of the blood. It's just like, it's really, this is not relaxing to watch in any way, but, talk about character. I often talk about this. Characters that you're rooting for, and you really want Jesse to come out of this on the other end. This was number 3 for the month, and this was Gerald's Game. Worth a look, whether you like Stephen King or not. Number 2 is a documentary from 2019 titled Making Waves, The Art of Cinematic Sound. So this is a documentary about movie making, and more specifically, this documentary by Midge Costin takes a look at, of course, cinematic sound. And it's an aspect of movies that I think a lot of people, moviegoers, take for granted. To me, it's like an umpire in a Major League Baseball game. If you notice it, something's wrong. So if the sound, something's, oh, that sounds terrible. That's your first thing. You don't say, wow, the sound was great in that. And you should, because a lot of work goes into it. Cinematic sound is extremely complex, and it's so important to the overall final product. There were so many well-known directors in this documentary paying homage to the sound people, all the sound people. And I like the way that they did this. The filmmakers compared it to an orchestra, and they have a graphic in the film that's wonderful, and it shows all of the different departments that are involved in creating the sound for a motion picture, separated into voice, sound effects, and music, and they all have subsections: production, recording, dialogue, sound effects, ambient sound, sound created by Foley artists, and all that mixes with the music. And if it's done the right way, you don't even notice it. And again, it's nice to see these famous directors talking about how essential this is to their creativity and their vision. They need the sound. And it's a ton of people. I loved seeing how all these artists and technicians pulled together to create the sound that goes with the images. I love this one. Was a real ear opener, if I may use that pun. Here we go. Number one. We are almost done. Here we go. Number one is another documentary. What a surprise. We love docs here at Cinema Wellman. From 2015, it is titled Drunk, Stoned, Brilliant, and Dead. And as of right now, I've been 2 of those. So figure that one out. Now, I've always felt that the family tree of comedy in the United States is, at least for people of my age, is firmly rooted in National Lampoon. The magazine was published from 1970 to 1998, and I picked it up as a teenager. To me, it was like a hardcore version of Mad Magazine. The humor was that much more, I guess, subversive is the best way to describe it. This informative and entertaining documentary centers on Doug Kenny, who co-founded the magazine in 1970. Unfortunately, Doug Kenny's story is one we've heard before. It's yet another sad story featuring brilliance combined with drug abuse, ending up in this case, a mysterious death. The film deals with this darkness, but the majority of it explains how things fell into place for this, what I consider cornerstone of American comedy. Watching this to me was like paging through a lot of my old issues. I remember that Gene wasn't too happy that Mad Magazine was in the house again for whatever reason. It was subversive. I guess she didn't want me to be subversive. I don't think she knew I had National Lampoon. I mean, it's rough. I mean, this humor is not for the faint of heart. They go after anything and everything, and it's all fair game. It's cringy, and yet it's so hysterically funny. Kudos to everyone ever involved in National Lampoon. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. I have to look through my old stuff and see if I have any issues that I saved from when I was a teenager. And that's it. That's it for September. That's the breakdown. Delivered to you, as always, without spoilers. Again, I never give you any information that's not included in either the IMDb synopsis or the trailer of the film. If you want anything spoiled, or if you want to ask me any questions or make requests for upcoming episodes or anything like that, you can find me. Email me at cinemawellman@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Cinema Wellman. and watch us on YouTube or listen to us on Spotify. And all you have to do there is search for Cinema Wellman, and you get a front row seat for everything that is in the world of Cinema Wellman. Coming up next, the next episode, the last time we did a Which Was Worse, and again, I'm looking up at my episodes that I have taped up on the wall here. Last time we did a Which Was Worse, it was Turbulent Skies versus Air Collision, a couple of airplane movies. Next time, and this is the next episode, we've got Creep Van versus Bus Party to Hell. And that's it for this one. Join us next time right here at Cinema Wellman. Until then, take care.